Okay, I am pleased to announce our final speaker for the day. He is a professor of practice at the University of Miami Department of Art and Art History and an artist in residence at Pinecrest Gardens. His work, particularly environmentally focused, is intended to generate awareness and action towards issues of global climate change. He has developed numerous collaborative art projects globally, including in Antarctica, Northern Ireland, Bolivia, Panama, Peru, and South Africa, as well as eco-art projects in Hawaii, New Hampshire, Taiwan, and Holland. In his talk, he will discuss a socially engaged art project that instills a sense of responsibility and encourages further exploration into environmental and climate policy issues. I am honored to introduce you to Xavier Cortada. Oops, I think you were muted there. All right, we're good. We can hear you now.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. What an exciting event all of you have put together from the beginning till this very last one. I'm just so pleased to be here with 208 people who are curious and interested in better understanding their world and understanding the power of science as our worldview to navigate and better understand this world. And I was privileged enough. Oh, I need to have my screen shared, please, if I could.
Sorry, that's on me. Let me just, sorry, Xavier, that's on me. Let me fix your settings.
I was privileged enough to be invited to the largest machine humans have ever built. It spans 2 countries. It's at the border of Switzerland and France. And it is the Large Hadron Collider where the God particle was discovered. And I bring you to that because if you ever, and I just want to confirm we are seeing my screen. Great. And if you have ever wondered how much data can come through and be analyzed at one moment in time, imagine 30 million protons smashing at one another through that little tube behind me in a superconductor collider to figure out if these 2 protons can generate a boson, a particle, that allows us to understand the standard model of physics, because discovering that is how we are able to understand that mass in the standard model of physics is provable. So I was embedded with the scientists of one of the 2 blind studies, each with 4,000 scientists and engineers, to try to help capture how in 2013 they made one of the most important advances in theoretical physics, and particularly applied here through particle physics at CERN. And I did so by working with a physicist from the university where I was artist in residence, then FIU. I'm currently artist in residence and professor of practice at the University of Miami, to look at the 5 different strategies that these scientists used to capture that. And in these banners, what you see are a very complex series of processes that I capture and I display. I don't have the time to explain all of that, but there is a TED Talk. If you shoot a screenshot of this, you can see my 7-minute TED Talk on that. The important thing I want to bring to our attention is that what I was trying to do here is create a site-specific installation using art to capture not just what the scientists were trying to communicate, albeit important, but here to inspire curiosity. Because in my 7 minutes, and definitely in my banners, I can't sit here and give you the entire scope of what particle physics is about. But what I can do is make you curious enough to dive deeper. And the way I did that is by celebrating all 4,000 individuals across all continents and 170 some universities in 40 different countries who work together to advance science. And that is what this particular visualization was about. I want to focus most of my attention today, though, not on how we explain our world, which is what clearly physics, chemistry, and biology allow us to do, but how we save it from ourselves. And I do that through an engaged practice that involves people becoming the protagonists of what is to be done. And I do different things in my capacity as an artist to help us move in that direction. Among them, I create site-specific installations that aim to inspire. Here, I use the moving ice sheet as a National Science Foundation artist as a marker, as a clock to mark the moving ice at the South Pole as an instrument of marking time. And I did that by putting a flag at every place where the South Pole stood on that glacier since humans inhabited it. Basically, you have Roy G. Biv, human vision, for the last 50 years to the date when I installed these flags on January the 4th of 2007. But importantly, what I was trying to do is help you visualize geological time. This is 500 meters capturing 50 years of human discovery where scientists stood at the South Pole, mostly today to focus on our climate. But I wanted to juxtapose that with a planting of a mangrove propagule at the South Pole that would theoretically take 150,000 years, longer than it has taken our species to leave Africa and migrate and populate every planet, create civilizations, phenotypes, structures, governance, agriculture, cities, and fossil fuel emitting processes. It's going to take it that long just to get to that point. So it was my way of helping us understand that we are stewards of this planet, that we're here for a time, but that there is big time. And that's so hard to capture and visualize. So again, I use processes to create a little bit of curiosity to try to get us there. And it is important for me to do that because as we know, we are in a situation where our planet is at great threat. And we need to help understand how those impacts of pumping invisible particles, carbon dioxide, methane into the atmosphere, have dire consequences as we have stronger, wetter, and unfortunately, slower moving hurricanes that will threaten us as we continue parting those particles, and the feedback mechanisms that happen as our polar caps melt, as our glaciers melt. So I needed a way, a structure, a process, not just to help you visualize it, but help you care about it. One of the ways I did that is by creating a piece around empathy, where I read the quotes of 24 people from across 24 time zones across planet Earth and conceptually brought them together because, of course, above at the equator, at South America, at Asia, distances are apart. But as you converge those longitudes into the poles, they converge to zero. And importantly, the issue of climate change is not one where your Pacific island goes under, but I'm going to be okay. But instead, it's about all of us coming together. So this is a process that gets repeated by people where they engage in a ritual to try to address the problem of our time, which of course is global climate change. And I do things like have a gallery exhibit where I create a disruption, just like climate change and rising seas and melting glaciers and heat is going to disrupt our lives and cause nation states to collapse unless we do something about it today. So here with people dressed up at their best, I literally melt a bunch of ice and create havoc in my own opening of my solo exhibit. Similarly, I create processes where I take people's property values, they're literally what their property is worth, and I make little flotillas out of them so they can begin to understand that their properties will not just go underwater in the real estate jargon, but literally physically underwater unless those particles don't leave the atmosphere. And for those who don't care about that long, because they won't be around then, I talk about the immediacy of climate change at a time where Miami and everywhere else across our planet for 10 years in a row has hit the record heat. In fact, we haven't had in recorded history the amount of heat days that we have now. It's never been hotter in the entire human experience. In fact, over 800,000 years, we have never had 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. We're at 415 right now. 800,000 years have shown us that it fluctuated between 200 and 300 in the time of the Industrial Revolution, not over a period of tens of thousands of years. Over a period of less than 2 centuries, it's gone up, not just by those 100, but from a threshold of 300 to now 400. What is in front of us is unspeakable, but we have to see it, understand it, own it, and act on it. And I try to do that sometimes through panels like I did here during the 12 days of the Paris talks, where I invited individuals to come and see art that would inspire them, but also listen to panels of scientists and experts who would educate them, and then importantly, really importantly, create a series of engaged activities that would motivate them. In the case here, I had the water that I collected at the South Pole on the right be blessed by the bishop of the Southeastern Diocese of the Episcopal Church at my gallery in a mass, and then have them distribute the little vessels so that all his priests across all the churches from West Palm Beach to Key West, the most vulnerable of all dioceses in the Episcopal Church, so that their parishioners could understand across the entire period of the Paris talks how important it was for them to act and understand what was happening in Paris. Other ways I've done that before. Here, I needed to capture how 76,000 Cuban rafters had died at sea 20 years, 15 years before I did this piece. And the way I visualize it is just by putting a glass of water with what was missing, 76,000 cadavers at the bottom of the Florida Straits. Again, I use emotion, and my job is to help you become part of the curious force that wants to understand, that wants to learn more. It's about piquing your interest. Sometimes it's about bringing it inside you. When I went to the North Pole with the New York Foundation for the Arts, I was invited, I was invited to create the same installations I did at the South Pole at the North Pole to talk about the impact of humans at every point in between. But on my way back on the icebreaker, I fed the people who were with me pieces of the North Pole ice, and I was giving them North Pole communion. Conceptually, the idea was if the molecules of water from the North Pole are in you, then you're going to care about the North Pole and do everything you can so that you do not melt it, so that the North Pole stays as the ecosystem that it is. Sometimes I use art to reframe the way we see things. In this case, water at Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest, LTR, where I serve on the committee of scientists and have been their artist in residence since 2012. I made water the protagonist. I literally used the weirs at Hubbard Brook so that the water would create the paintings as opposed to a human creating the paintings. And of course, we know the force and power of water, the Grand Canyon, right? Water has force, and I wanted to show that force artistically. I've also done it in the more traditional way. This is the water viz that for 5 years I worked with engineers and scientists at Hubbard Brook and at the universities affiliated with the Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest to design the water viz. And it is literally a live streaming program. You can go look at it at the website here. Again, feel free to take a screenshot. And what you will see is literally the data visualization of water as it moves through the water cycle at a watershed. And the website that we've created includes a way where you can actually learn a little bit more and see the visualization, how I depicted and worked with these other scientists and engineers in showing evaporation, in showing stream flow, showing all these different things that scientists measure on a daily basis that they see on charts like CERN, lots of numbers, but here by visualizing the data, you can have a better understanding of what is happening with water. And of course, water matters at Hubbard Brook because it is where acid rain was discovered. Just minutes ago, well, it was at 2 a.m., so just recently, the principal investigator of the forest wanted the community to understand what would happen with 3 inches of rain. So if you were to go to WaterViz, or if you were to go to her account or my account, I'm Cortada on Instagram and Twitter, you would be able to see how water impacted. Again, important ways of visualizing science, visualizing data, particularly in an experimental forest that is trying to help our country and our society navigate through this climate crisis that we're facing now. Another LTER, long-term ecological research project that I am affiliated with, I'm a collaborator with, is the McMurdo Dry Valleys LTER in Antarctica. And over here, I use sediments from that very lake that you saw to create ice paintings made in Antarctica with materials given to me by the scientists who study Antarctica back when I was there in 2007, to create a series of ice paintings that are the precursor of the horrors to come. The very ice that I melted in the lab turned studio in Antarctica is the ice that is going to melt and drown my beloved city of Miami and every other coastline across the globe. And I tried sounding the alarm by returning from the pole and giving these works to the governor of California then, and the governor of Florida then, back in 2007. Since then, I've broadened my audience, not just showing them at galleries or giving them to dignitaries or showcasing them at museums, but engaging community members in something called the Underwater Homeowners Association, so that we could begin taking action today for a problem that is invisible, but clearly will wreak havoc in the future. And I did that by putting the ice paintings as a backdrop of a series of markers that people would put in front of their homes to mark the elevation of their properties. And let me show you this video from CNN that will, in 2 minutes, try to capture and explain what I'm trying to say.
Short drive from Untitled downtown to bargaining, depression, and acceptance in Pinecrest.
I live in Pinecrest. I'm at 11.
I'm 8.54 feet.
My name is Sylvia. I'm 9.
Where neighbors have formed America's first underwater homeowners association.
I'm 7 feet, lower than I thought, to be honest. My name is Judy, and I'm here for hope and for inspiration.
There was some really negative response where people recoiled and say, "Why are you doing this? You're going to hurt us and hurt our property values," which I found to be part of the cancer I'm trying to cure. It is the brainchild of artist and activist Xavier Cortada.
What's happening in our community?
Before water covers the street in the next century, there will be an aquifer below it that will not give you the fresh water that you drink in these homes. And before that happens, there's going to be a flood insurance rise. As that happens, there's going to be property value devaluation, because all of a sudden the psychology of a house being an investment is going to be starting to turn on its head.
Now, my home is in danger, a whole bunch of homes next to me.
The fear is palpable here in Miami. So what I want to do is give people a mechanism for coping and dealing with that fear and preparing for the inevitable.
So in that piece, what you see is
Short drive from
trying to showcase what is to come. This is Miami with 6 feet of water elevation. This blue area up here is home to hundreds of thousands of individuals. And through slow activism, what I'm trying to do is empower you and embolden you to have the ability to problem solve this and not kick the can down the road like people who have 2- and 4-year terms of office tend to do. And what I first did is visualize the problem. So we took the community where my studio is located, and we used technology, used an app to have people find out the elevation of their properties. They then took those elevations and created these signs that they put in the community. Initially, I had students from high schools literally paint the intersections of our community so that it would be visible to all drivers, people who weren't involved. They would drive by and they would see that this elevation was there. By being so public, it became a conversation piece of the community where people would talk about their elevation. It was important for them to understand that it's not necessarily true that the farther you are from the water, the safer you are. Quite the opposite. There's a ridge. So what they would see is that the numbers would go up in the intersections, and then they would come down. Again, mapping the topography of our community, but doing it in a way that had neighbors understand that they had a shared interest, not a political interest. So Antarctica doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, it's coming to your home. So instead of putting political yard signs, I had people put elevation signs so they could begin talking to one another about the issue, and then invited them into homeowners association groups where they would learn together and work together to begin to problem solve. And that is what the essence of this visualization is. I care passionately about you understanding the data, but I care more about you being interested in it and using it and being a protagonist. So my way of visualizing is not visualizing to educate, it's visualizing to educate in order to engage, in order to create a cadre of citizens who will be science literate and able to think creatively to problem solve. And that is the essence of my practice. And if you want to be part of our underwater HOA today, just to understand what's going on, well, I forgot about this slide. We then, during the elections, used our signs, but in this case, to have people vote on climate issues, not to vote again on 2 or 3 terms, which is what elected officials care about satisfying, but voting your 30-year interest, your 50-year interest, when the kid who you are going to give your home to may not have anything worth inheriting. Tonight, we actually have a data visualization expert who's going to be our monthly guest speaker. And since COVID, like this meeting, our speeches are all done on Zoom. Please screenshot the top of the screen so you can join us at 7 p.m. tonight. I will be convening our meeting. Our chair, the chair of ocean sciences at the very prestigious Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, the University of Miami, will be our chair. Some of our members will be there, and I invite every single one of you, particularly those of you interested in data visualization, even if sea level rise is not your issue. Today, Dr. Cairo will share his expertise on how he visualizes the rising seas, something that Miami is ground zero for. It's been a total pleasure spending time with you and speaking to you a little bit about my work. If you're interested in any of these projects, all you have to do is go to my website. And if you click on projects or in the search engine, you can learn and find out more about all of these projects. But more importantly, what I aim to have done today is to, working with this incredible group of speakers, hopefully inspire you to continue elevating your art form, to inspire you to understand that we are in a crisis, to understand that our world, not just our country, is polarized. And unfortunately, the worldview isn't always science. The worldview at times is ideology. And if we can marshal our creativity to have people understand that science will save us from COVID, from sea level rise, from wars, then I think we serve our world better and move humanity forward. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Xavier. That was an amazing talk, very inspiring. See, I think there was a question that came in. If there are any questions, please mark them with the asterisk. I do have a question myself. I was wondering what medium was used for the signs or the HOA project, or what kind of materials?
Yeah, sure. Initially, they were yard signs. They were printed signs, much like people's political signs. The project caught on beyond my wildest dreams. So by the time election day, this was launched during the summer of August of 2018. The New York Times did a nice story on it. a lot of local media and support, but what really made it work was word of mouth. People saw the signs on their streets. By the time we got to election day, it was a movement. And what I asked people to do on election day is to make their own signs using and recycling their political signs. And if you go to that website, there's a bunch of stories on NPR and BBC and stuff like that that talk about that moment. Like, it was a very partisan 2018 election. And it was, okay, guys, now that the election is over, obviously they didn't take heed. It got even more partisan political. But now the election is over, let's take these signs, like take these plowshares, right? Swords, and make them to plowshares. Oh, we took these signs to make them these things. And that was what they became afterwards, just recycled. And on the website, you'll see that process. You'll see it go from an in-person to a virtual. And you see it go from a printed to a handmade.
Awesome, cool. Okay, we have some questions that did come in. Did people ever give you a hard time about placing the signs around?
Of course. That's what the CNN video captured. And look, I think we have to be empathetic. That's what that longitudinal installation piece. People are scared, and people find comfort in putting their heads in the sand. That's what we know how to do. We know how to deny, kick the can down the road, right? And in one way or another, throw some confusion so that we don't have to act, because acting is hard, right? But the longer we wait, the harder it becomes. And the way I resolve that issue is by reminding them that every time a hurricane comes to Miami and it's 3 days out, we do everything in our power to problem solve. We put our shutters up, we buy water, we take care of the elderly because we know a storm is coming. It's predicted, it's coming up. But that storm recedes and FEMA bails us out every time. But this time we see it's 30, 40 years on the horizon. It doesn't go away, the water doesn't recede, and there will be no federal government to save us because it will hit every single American coastline at the same time. So to me, it's, let's sacrifice a little today to lessen the suffering to come. And you know whose suffering I want to lessen? Your grandchild's suffering. Is that worth it? Is that worth it for you? So that's how you do it. And again, by having people work together, by having them understand, by them making the signs, by them coming together as a community. There's a beautiful video on the website from the AP that shows you people hand making signs in a local park. So it's about building community, but also having people understand that they have the power in themselves to effectuate change.
Okay, awesome. Can take one more question. This is really interesting and engaging work. Thank you. Respectfully, how do you reconcile your own carbon footprint, for example, from air travel with the day-to-day work and projects you do? Also to say that I know we're all at different stages of trying to minimize our impact.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking the question respectfully. And we live in a world where I don't think absolutism works. I think, and that's not an excuse. I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the wonderful things I have done to heal our planet and inspired people to do. But I'm also trying to do it in a way that mobilizes and moves as many people as possible. So I'm well aware and cognizant of the path I'm taking. And what I care about most is not the immediacy, right? I don't care about doing something that screams really loud to try to stop a problem, but nothing happens. I care about slow activism. I care about making sure that it's not making a statement. It's not about screaming the loudest. It's literally about trying to, over time, engage others. And the thing about slow activism is that you put it out there and you hope that it inspires and gets people to act. Now, there's a lot of behaviors that are incredibly positive. All you have to do is go to the website that showcase how we do that. But there are some things that that require that. I am in a room, and this room, down to the computer I'm talking to you, has an incredible carbon footprint. And what we try to do is do our best. The reason I want slow movement is because if every environmentalist did what we do, we would still have a problem. What we need is systemic change that we can use through visualization to get government to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, to get government to put in regulations that allow human beings not to have to worry about their wallet versus a safe and clean future. So I'm more concerned about getting to that end than I am about demonstrating how clean my carbon footprint is.
Well, thank you. What a way to end off. Thank you so much for being here with us, Xavier. I really appreciate your presentation.
My pleasure.